back to TalkNorth.com. Thank you for listening. If you can, please download before you listen. It helps our business. I'd also like to thank our producer, Brandon Morton, and let you know if you'd like to sponsor this program or any of the programs on the network, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. We got some Zimmer stuff to talk about. I'm Jim Souhan. I am in Anaheim, California. The Star Tribune sent me out here to cover college basketball. Tim Yoder is back home monitoring and covering Vikings news. Mike Zimmer had some stuff to say. We're going to get to that. We'll talk about the offensive line and the rest of the Vikings franchise. This is the Viking Update show, starring Viking Update publisher Tim Yoder, part of the TalkNorth.com podcast network. Thanks to our producer, Brandon Morton. Thanks to our sponsors, Twill in the Dining Galleria, Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent, Champlin, and Bite Squad. BiteSquad.com, Bite Squad app. Use the promo code TalkNorth. One word to get your first delivery free. So, Tim, before we get to football, I got to say, we live in Minnesota. We spent all winter wondering, God, what it would be like to live in L.A.? What would it be like to live someplace warm where they don't have to deal with black ice? And you know what? I landed at LAX at about 3:30. I had to go about 20 miles. It took me 2 hours. I sat still on the freeway. And here's the weird thing. I mean, anybody can complain about traffic, right? Here's the weird thing. It's traffic, but it's LA traffic. So you're looking at sunshine and palm trees while you're sitting there. It's like your heart doesn't know whether to grow because you're in this beautiful, in this beautiful weather place, or to shrink because you are not moving on a freeway.
Don't think for 1 minute that people live in California don't take the palm trees and the warm weather for granted. I mean, by the time we're into August, September, we're kind of starting to take summer for granted. And then, so I don't think that calms their nerves. I would guess that everybody that lives in LA is just fed up with traffic. And you know what? That's kind of what we put up with when we have snowstorms. So unfortunately for them, it's every single day. I would not be able to handle that.
I will say, I have Ryan Lefevre grew up in L.A., moved to Minnesota to play baseball for Minnesota, and never went back. Roy Smalley grew up in Southern California, moved to Minnesota, never went back. It is interesting that as Minnesotans, because we whine about the weather, because we hate the weather half of the year, sometimes we don't realize that there are a lot of people from nice weather states who prefer living in Minnesota. And not that I would ever really thought about living in Los Angeles, but just, you have those thoughts during the winter. All right, enough about that crap. Let's get to Mike Zimmer. Once again, if you'd like to advertise with the network or this show, you can reach us at talknorthpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks to our producer, Brandon Morton. Follow us on Twitter at TalkNorthPod to get live show details and sponsor deals. And please download before you listen. All right, so I'll hand it off to you. Tell me what Zimmer's up to.
Well, the NFL had their annual owners meetings earlier this week, and which means that every NFL coach spends about an hour with anybody that'll walk by the table, sit down, have breakfast with them, and answer just about any question you want. Now, of course, Bill Belichick, I saw something that he went about, I think it was 47 minutes, and the average length of his answer, I think, was 15 words, which you would expect no less from Bill Belichick. But the great part about it from a Vikings perspective is that I think fans see Mike Zimmer in season, and as the season goes on, he gets a little more irritated, a little more grouchy, a little less time to really delve into the questions. In settings like this, at the owners' meetings or at the NFL scouting combine, he's terrific. He will let you know how he feels. And the number one topic I came away with from his, I think it was about 55-minute talk with reporters, was his criticism of Xavier Rhodes. And it's not necessarily a new thing. When Zimmer first came in 2014, I remember going out to those OTAs and mini camps And Zimmer was constantly in the ear of Rhodes. And, I asked Rhodes about it, and he said, he's like that with all the cornerbacks and defensive backs, and, he's trying to get our technique right and everything. But I swear there was nobody that he was, I don't know if saying he was hard on Rhodes is accurate, but he was constantly on him. And then we saw Rhodes have really good few seasons under Zimmer. And in 2018, he took a step back, and Zimmer said, Xavier needs to play up to his contract. We're paying him a lot of money, and he needs to play better. And so I thought that was one of the most interesting, honest, brutal things that Zimmer had to say at these owners' meetings.
And I love that candor. And let's be honest here. I covered beats for a long time, and the process does wear on people. So, we needle Zimmer. Sometimes we criticize Zimmer when he's too short, when he's too grumpy at the end of a season. It does work both ways, though. I mean, there were times I covered Twins teams, covered people I really liked, and by the end of the season, we were sick of each other. And then you see each other next spring, and you'd get along great again. But there is the human element of covering people under tremendous pressure who are completely focused in on winning, and they're not always going to be joyful to see people who are going to ask them tough questions. We do understand that.
Yeah, and you know what, Zimmer, kind of needles us once in a while about, oh great, ruin my day, got to talk to the media type of thing.
Tweet that.
Yeah, tweet that sort of thing. And honestly, there are some irritating things that reporters can ask, or the way that they ask them, or the manner in which
the reporters themselves
conduct themselves.
We won't mention any names, but we know.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that some reporters can, in my opinion, get a little out of bounds in either the questions that they ask or the behavior. But this to me was interesting, because he was just simply asked about the cornerbacks and the depth that he has there. It wasn't at all a leading question. And, he said, yeah, I feel good about having Trey Waynes and Xavier Rhodes. And then he started in on Rhodes needing to play better. And one of the interesting things was a reporter asked him how much he thought injuries that Rhodes went through last year, and the fact that he's going to turn 29 in June, maybe he's lost a step. Zimmer dismissed all of that and just said, no, it's about his technique. He's gotten away from it, and he needs to get back to it, and I'm going to make sure that he does. But, honestly, going back and after the season ended, I was talking to Rhodes about his injuries, and he said, 100%, it was the worst season, or most frustrating season for him because of all the injuries. He missed 2 games, which isn't all that much, but he was also questionable for another 8 games. He went through ankle, hip, groin, hamstring, and maybe one other injury throughout the season. And there's very little doubt in my mind that had a cumulative effect. But, if Zimmer sees technique things that, somebody like myself is not going to be able to pull out all the minutia that Zimmer does, then you know what? He's going to probably have Zimmer on his rear end during OTAs and during minicamp again, and have to do a bit of a reset in one of those things where, if we're paying you, I think it's 70 or 72 million over 5 years, you better perform like it. And so I'm going to be curious to see how things go this offseason between Rhodes and Zimmer.
Really interesting. And, Rhodes, he certainly appears to be he generally appears to be a good soldier, but he's also the guy who gets into it with Stephon Diggs on the practice field. He's also one of the guys who seemed to disobey Zimmer's orders that one day in Green Bay. So, he's got an edge to him.
Oh, there's no doubt. He has generally been fairly quiet, reserved, especially early in his career. But the more time he has spent here, the more time he has spent under Zimmer, he has become more vocal, and he's also become more irritable. And I think he feels a sense of he can do that because of what he's accomplished in his career and how long he's been around and what Zimmer expects of him. But clearly last year in training camp, when he and Diggs got into it, Zimmer was fed up with it and sent them both off because essentially it was getting to the point where it was disrupting, some of the things that the coaches were looking to get done on the field when those two were going back and forth on each other. And, they both played nice after it, which you would expect after he sent them to the locker room. But, there is an edge to Rhodes at times. And frankly, I like it. I want to see that in a cornerback. And, I'd rather have that than somebody who doesn't care. So it's two highly competitive guys, one being a player, one being a coach. And, they have figured out a way to be pretty good together. And, I certainly don't think this is going to cause a lot of animosity, but it might light a fire under Rhodes.
Let's talk about the other defensive changes. Do want to thank Twill in the Dining Galleria, TWILLMN.com, TWILL on Instagram. Check out beautiful photos of beautiful clothes, beautiful shop, really nice people. They've been great to our network. And they do a great job. They have stuff you're not going to find in your average store because Scott Dayton's always out looking for the next cool brand. Like I bought Johnny O stuff when I'd never seen a Johnny O item before, and ended up buying about 3 of them because I liked them so much. So check out twillmn.com for everything they have to offer.
Jim usually doesn't like to shop for clothes. I don't like it when he shops for clothes either because he used to buy stuff I'd want to throw out. That's why I'm so glad he's found Twill in the Edina Galleria. He likes shopping there because of the comfortable environment and the friendly staff. He finds clothes that actually fit him properly and are high-quality brands that will look great for years, whether he's golfing or working. Our favorites so far are Peter Millar, Johnny O, and Barber. We spend our money at Twill because we love the clothes and we love the no-pressure shopping. Drop by Twill in the Edina Galleria for the best shopping experience and best clothes you'll find in the Twin Cities.
So what changes are we going to see in this defense? Now that they have Barr back, we know they have a lot of core players back, but there will be changes.
Yeah, and Zimmer kind of hinted at a little bit of it earlier after they signed Shamar Stephen and said because of the difference in the way that he plays versus Sheldon Richardson, my takeaway was, okay, the expectation would maybe be, all right, Shamar takes on another blocker at times and frees up a linebacker to be able to make more plays. Whereas with Sheldon Richardson, he was about getting off the snap quickly and disrupting things. But earlier this week on Tuesday, when Zimmer was talking, he sounded like there are going to be some really, I don't know if I want to say dramatic changes, because I don't think it's going to be an every game thing or something we will see on a regular basis. But he called it out of the box type of thinking with the way he wants to run the defense. And one of the things he kept referencing was there are a lot of offenses now that do a bunch of horizontal stuff. And, he kind of went back to, hey, that's what Bill Walsh used to do. And, back when Zimmer was coaching at Washington State and Weber State in college, he went against Walsh or Walsh disciples. And he needed to figure out a way to stop that. So I'll be curious to see if he, the changes that he implements means, okay, maybe at times there's only 3 defensive linemen on the field and he needs more speed to cover things horizontally, whether that's, having a guy like J. Ron Curse in there, or, perhaps you're playing, 4 linebackers or 3 safeties, just different things that he's going to do to, I think, try to get more sideline to sideline speed on the defense. So I thought that was pretty interesting because he kept talking about, people come up to me and say how good our defense is, but yet I think Zimmer knows that at times maybe there's not enough variety in the things that he's running. But there's also the danger of overreacting to something like that. And I think we saw it in the first month of the 2018 season where he made changes in the offseason to the defense, and it just didn't work. It seemed like players were confused and they didn't know where they were supposed to be, and they just didn't play very good defense. And once Zimmer went back and simplified things, things started to turn around. So it'll be interesting to see how everything goes this offseason and at the beginning of the season.